On this episode, we discuss whether Thailand lives up to its nickname as the land of the free.
So if you've ever pondered this question, or indeed what freedom even means, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 and is just now starting to get feeling back into my frozen toes.
Damn, that takes a while, huh?
Yeah.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 22 years ago, fell in love with ordering food at a Thai restaurant and waiting to see if I've won the lottery and finding out that they actually have it. So I never left.
What are you ordering, like cowpat ostrich or something?
No, it's a gamble. I thought of this because there's a really good vegetarian restaurant near Khao San Road called Mango. So I actually highly recommend it. But they have an extensive menu of all of these super interesting looking stuff. But about 1/3 of the stuff on the menu, maybe even 50%, they don't have. So I read something like Chipotle lentil curry, and I'm like, oh, that sounds so good. And then, when I order it, it's like I feel like I'm rolling the dice.
I read some comment on some expat Facebook group today about someone went to a chicken restaurant in Paragon, and they're like, they ordered a burger, a chicken burger, and they're like, we're out of buns. And the guy is like, do you want me to run to the grocery store right there and pick some up for you? Because I can. It's not a big deal.
No, this is a thing, man. It's a thing in Thailand. It's like the menus are things that restaurants might have. That's what a menu is. They're more like things we could have. That's what it means.
Here's a suggestion of things you might like if we have them.
Right.
That's fine.
Anyway, we want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get our ad-free regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos of our interviews, a heads up to send questions to upcoming guests, and access to our Discord server to chat with me, Greg, and other listeners around the world. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and Bangkok topics. On this week's bonus show, we chatted about how Greg has drawn a line in the sand and moved to Mastodon after Elon Musk messed everything up on Twitter, the scandal over a police escort of a random VIP or VVIP passenger from the airport, and the new demerit system for new drivers and whether or not it's having any effect. Spoiler, it doesn't appear to be having an effect, at least not yet. To learn how to become a patron, click the support button at the top of our website.
That's right. And as always, if you have a comment, a show idea, or just want to say hi, head to bangkokpodcast.com, click the little microphone button on the bottom right, and leave us a voicemail that we'll use on the show. All right, so on this episode, we're going to go deep here. We're going to take a look at Thailand, literally the word Thai land, and ponder what it means. Now, many of us are told that it literally means land of the free, but does it really? And what does free even mean? One can say that, roughly speaking, Thailand is a free country, but compared to a place like the USA, where rah-rah freedom is almost the motto, is it really? Also, one could argue that given Thailand's, let's say, more flexible justice system and sabai lifestyle, Thailand is actually more free than many Western countries. So, Ed, this is a really interesting topic. This is your idea because you think on a higher level than I do. I really like this discussion, but I'm going to follow your lead here. What are you thinking?
Well, this is my idea, and I do think this is a fascinating topic. But I'm really, to me, this is actually an interesting academic issue. But we are not in academic land right now. We're in let's goof around land. So I consider this just a brainstorming session, and it's something I've thought about before, but it also came up in an interview that you and I did this last weekend with two super interesting people who will be guests on the show in the future. So we're working on editing that interview. But it came up because we were interviewing a Thai woman who actually has a PhD in political science from the U.S., so which is extremely rare. And we were discussing this issue of freedom, the U.S. being a free country, but Thailand also supposedly free. At least even the name Thailand, a lot of people are taught, means land of the free. Now, right. You and I, you and I, not being experts in Thai language, we try to do a little bit of research into the etymology. And what we could find out is this idea that Thailand actually means land of the free is a little bit of kind of folk etymology. So this is not a new idea. It's an old idea, but apparently linguists haven't quite figured out the derivation or where exactly this idea comes from. But it is a fairly old idea, and so I guess words can mean anything we want them to mean. So
Someone saying when you say make up a fake word, they say that word is made up, and the response is, well, every word is made up. We just have
that's
to
right.
agree on what it means.
So we can say by tradition, Thailand is translated as land of the free. But apparently the precise source of that is unknown. And here's why I'm fascinated with this idea. And I think I've mentioned this on the bonus show before. But my original source of this comes from around 2005.
Okay.
When a Thai friend of mine, a guy who I haven't had many Thai guys who I've been friends with, but he was dating a girl I was friends with. So I was friends with a Thai guy. He went to the States, and I think he was there for like a semester. But when he came back, I asked him, what was your first impression of being in the U.S.? Right?
Yeah.
And he thought for a while, and he said, an immediate loss of freedom.
Really interesting. I bet there's an American bald eagle that's crying tears of sadness.
Right. No, this was fascinating. Plus, because I teach political science, and so I was like, wait, what do you mean? And then, but as soon as he started explaining himself, I immediately understood what he meant. He told me a story of, it was either his first or second day there, where I think he was trying to go to an interview at a university or something like that. Yeah. And he had to rent a car and then find parking near the university. And he knew in the U.S. that cops are real, that he couldn't bribe his way out of a problem, that he had to park where it was legal to park, that the actual fee, like if you get a ticket in the U.S., it's not going to cost $5, So he was kind of scared, like he's a newbie in the U.S. and he knows he's got to follow all the rules, and he's trying to read the signs and read the thing on the meter that says 9 to noon and 1 to 4, right. and he
Tuesdays
just said
and
that,
Thursdays, but not Wednesdays or Saturdays.
Yeah, so he told me the story about how he just immediately felt less free because now all of a sudden he actually has to follow all the rules. Like there's no flexibility. There are rules and you must follow them. And if you don't, there are clear penalties.
And it doesn't matter who you are, what your family name is. These are the rules.
That's exactly right. And you can't solve it immediately. Like I've always thought, I know this might cause other problems, but I've always thought that you could have a system where you're actually allowed to pay the fine right there to the cop. I know that opens up possibilities, but whatever, why can't, the cop gives you the ticket and you say, let's say you actually owe $50. Why can't you just take money out of your wallet and pay it right there? So you could imagine a system like that is not corrupt. It's just the way it is. But he knew being in the States that it doesn't work that way. It's going to go to a court. And I can't remember, and then he's got to worry about, oh my God, how do I appear in court, or how do I pay this? So I don't have an address. You can mail stuff in. So he was aware that he just didn't want to get entangled in the American justice system. Even though I think almost everyone would agree that the American justice system is less corrupt than the Thai one. But the thing about the way corruption works, as I think you and I have mentioned this before, and I think we even talked about it this last weekend in this interview, is that in some ways, corruption can work in your favor. If you're, again, we've discussed this before, the minor traffic violation, and in Thailand, in most cases, you could just give that 200 baht and it's gone, and there's no record, and you don't have to mail anything in. And so corruption doesn't seem so bad when it's easy.
But it works in your favor.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the damn thing about it, is because you complain all you want, and then suddenly when you're
until you need it,
you get out of jail free card, you're like, all right, I'm not saying no to this.
Right. Anyway, so that's what sparked this topic, and I've really thought about it a lot over the years. And if I was a serious scholar, which I apparently am not, I consider myself a serious teacher. I teach a lot, but not really a serious scholar. But I think this is an interesting topic, and the idea is something like this: on a day-to-day basis, maybe a country that is just flexible and chilled out, where maybe the cops don't do all that much, it might actually day-to-day feel more free than a country with the real rule of law and a lot of literal political freedom. So in the U.S., The U.S., I think, probably has the most political freedom in the U.S. in terms of freedom of speech. You can say almost anything and the government can't punish you. Not literally everything. There are some limits. But everyone knows that in Thailand, there are actual legal limits to freedom of speech. There are things you're not allowed to say. And then even stuff that's supposed to be legal is not really. So you're supposed to be able to criticize the government, not the monarchy, but the government. But everyone knows that if you kind of criticize the government too much, they find kind of some way to
right. There's the Computer Crime Act or something like that.
Yeah, to mess your shit up. But here's the sad fact. As someone who's I've been teaching political science for a long time, and I started studying political science. I don't even want to know, God. I mean, basically, almost 40 years ago. It's frightening to think about. Well, one thing I've realized is that there's a lot of people out there who don't really care about political freedom. In other words, for a lot of people, if you say to them, hey, you're not allowed to criticize the government in public at all. Like, there's a bunch of people who go, yeah, so,
this doesn't change my day.
Yeah, so not everyone is into politics. Not everyone needs a right to stand up on a soapbox. Not everyone wants to be a blogger or a vlogger or get on Twitter. Right. Like, a lot of people, they just care more about their day-to-day stuff. Like, they want to know about their taxes or if the cops are going to harass them. So I think when you're in a country with a tradition of political speech and you're taught to value it, you do. So it's like Americans especially, we just value our freedom of speech. And so if the government moves 1 inch to limit it, people explode. This is the whole problem with cancel culture. So it's so when you have this long tradition of free speech, you see the value in it. But what I've learned living in Thailand is that if you've never had it, you don't honestly know what you're missing. As a matter of fact, you just don't. And my students, they don't like the restrictions on freedom of speech. If you gave them a survey, would you prefer to change the law? They would say yes.
Right.
But if you ask them does this honestly really hurt you or affect you directly, or are you willing to fight in the streets to fix this? They're going to say no.
Well, this is something I find interesting because it's one of those situations where I have to admit that I'm wrong. Because a lot of times, I think I'm not alone here. I think a lot of us like to steam into a situation or a place and say, all right, this is my perception of how things are, and this is how things work, and this is how it's going to go. And I was always like that when I heard the phrase Thai-style freedom, Thai-style democracy, Thai-style anything. Right. And I used to say something like, well, no, there's democracy. That's all it is. It's a black or white issue. But,
Sure.
The older you get and the longer you live here, the more you realize that, that sort of definition that, it doesn't apply the same across the board, that can come out in a lot of different ways. And so, for instance, you think about the quote that you hear from Thai officials going back many, many years saying of course we have freedom of expression, freedom of the press. You just can't talk about these things. Right, you're
exactly.
Well, all right, that's not really freedom of the press. But then that becomes Thai-style freedom. And like you said, okay, freedom of the press, I can't write stories about X, Y, or Z. Well, I wasn't going to write stories about X, Y, Z anyway. So I'm not really being oppressed. I'm still as free as I was before.
That's right. I think that, so I think this is one factor, that when you've never had it, you tend not to value it. So in a way, you can say it doesn't matter, right? But I think there's a lot of dimensions to this topic, because another dimension is not really political. I would call it social. Okay. And we all know that Thailand is famous for just having a chilled out culture. Right. Thai people are not confrontational. They're not direct. They don't get in your face. They're chill, sabai, sanuk, mai pinarai. These are all the famous words to describe Thai culture. Mm-hmm. And that is a type of freedom. The fact that, again, we've touched on various facets of this before. If you're gay in Thailand, are you really accepted 100%? Probably not, but no one's going to get in your face about it. No one's going to throw a rock at your, car or whatever.
Right.
The bottom line is they're just not confrontational. So that kind of live and let live, they might be whispering behind your back. I think that this is the difficult thing about freedom. It's the bottom line is, it would be great to have total equality where you are accepted 100%. But what actually affects your life is, can I walk down the street unharassed? That's what really matters on a day-to-day basis. And Thailand has that kind of freedom. It's like Thai people, again, there's exceptions, but on average, they just don't get in your face. There's just this social freedom, this sabai attitude. Thai people are nice and non-confrontational, and maybe that counts for a lot. So maybe being in a Western country where people are more in your face, more confrontational socially, the result is you actually have less freedom, or you feel less free. In Thailand, I feel like you can just relax a little bit more and be yourself, and you're just less likely for someone to get in your face. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of it is, I remember years ago I wrote an article on my blog about how Thailand was sort of like a Darwinian system. Like when I think about Canada, there's all these rules, like you can't go over here and you can't do this, and this has to be up to code, and you have to have an inspector come in to do this because you might hurt yourself or you might injure yourself or you might fall and trip or something like that. But Thailand's very much like, there's a hole in the road or something, or the sidewalk, and there's a stick put in the middle of it with a Red Bull bottle upside down on top,
That's
so
right.
It's very much like, well, if you're an idiot and you're not paying attention, you're going to get hurt. That's your fault. That's not my fault. And it's not my obligation to take care of that. So that could be seen as some sort of freedom as well. Like you're free to do whatever you want, but you also have to take responsibility for the stuff that you get yourself into. Years ago, my sister was here with her boyfriend, and they had a restaurant together. He was a chef. And
I remember this. Yep.
Yeah. And we had a cutting board in the kitchen, a wooden cutting board that my mother-in-law had bought from, some guy with a cart going up and down the soy. And he said, "You're using a wooden cutting board?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, we're not allowed to use those in Canada in the restaurants. We have to use plastic because wood is too porous and the bacteria might get into the wood and cause infected food."
I remember this whole discussion.
Like,
I remember this whole discussion. Actually, it went even further than that. They were talking about how they lived in an apartment above the restaurant.
Right.
And they said that the Canadian inspectors, under Canadian law, if you're in the building where the restaurant is, all the kitchens in the building have to follow the rules. So they went up and looked at their apartment kitchen to see if it was up to code.
Like, hey, your beef in your home fridge is above the cheese. That's not allowed.
That's right, because they were in the same house as the restaurant. They were living in an apartment above. But this is my whole point. You have these advanced countries, quote unquote advanced, and those societies like the US and Canada, they have the rule of law and they're highly regulated. Mm-hmm. But I mean, regulation is a lack of freedom. I mean, so I don't want to get into topics like for me, if you just cut to the chase and ask, would I rather have the real rule of law or Thailand? I'm a rule of law guy. So I think if you factor everything in, I want the rule of law. But we're not talking about everything. We're just talking about the ability to just go about your life. Like, do most people, or would most people, just feel more free being in Thailand? Like, that's the topic. And it's funny because even though, again, if you ask me to pick one, I want the rule of law. I want real freedom of speech. I care about political freedom of speech. I really do. I teach it. Mm. But if you ask me, Ed, on a day-to-day basis, do you feel more free walking around Bangkok or walking around Cleveland? I might say Bangkok, and it's so hard for me to say that as an American.
Really?
But I don't know what my answer is. Like, because, you before the show started, you and I were talking about actually free is a little bit hard to define. Like,
well, that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you,
it's a little bit hard to define because like it gets into these issues of, well, I know that in Thailand, if I screw up and a cop gets in my face, I probably could pay a bribe. So does that count as freedom? Like does that count as freedom that I know I can bribe my way out of something?
Can you imagine if you paid some bribe to some traffic cop and he drove away going, USA, USA, that's the kind of thing.
It's this idea of, that there is, again, there's kind of a higher level concept of freedom, which I really value. And if you make me choose, I'm going to choose that. But then maybe the price of higher level political freedom, maybe you have to give up a little social freedom. Like maybe you do have to follow more rules, or maybe you have to follow more regulations to get the protection when you need it. Because the bottom line is, when we talk about the freedom you get from Thai cops being chilled out, well, that also means that they're not going to help you if you're like, it's kind of what you said before. You're on your own.
Right.
And
And we're not saying that Thailand is totally unregulated either. Like, there are obviously regulations here, and there are laws and structures in place to prevent abuse and things like that.
the bottom line is there's fewer regulations and they're enforced less.
Well, that's what makes this question so hard to answer, is because it's such a subjective definition of the word. Now, I'm looking at Wikipedia right now, and it says freedom is understood as either having the ability to act or change without constraint, or to possess the power and resources to fulfill one's purpose unhindered. But the difficulty with defining it that way is that everyone's purpose is different. Like, some psychotic sociopath's purpose might be to, start a fire in a crowded movie theater.
Right.
And I'm using extreme examples, obviously. Like you said, another one's purposes might be to go to work and come home every day and be with their family. They're free. They're just as free as anyone else. Another one's purpose might be to start an anti-government protest campaign. They might not think things are so free.
That's right. Right. It depends on what you want to do. So, before last year, like, if you wanted to smoke cannabis, like, you would be better off being in Oregon than in Thailand, before, until last year. So if that's your idea of freedom, being able to smoke cannabis, then it might have been better to be, in Vancouver. So it is tricky. But I think there's other facets to this. So I try to see all the angles of this. So another angle of this is maybe one of the reasons that you and I, or maybe expats, feel so much freedom in Thailand is because we're foreigners and we're in our own expat bubble, and Thai people mostly ignore us. And I have a lot of Thai friends, and I think Thai people. This is a little bit tricky subject, but I think I'm saying something that is valuable here. Thai people are not confrontational, but my Thai friends complain all the time about gossip and other Thai people getting in their business and things like that. So I think I think that Thai people, one of the reasons why sometimes they like to hang out with expats is that they're free from other Thai people like getting in their business. Thai villages are famously like gossipy. There's like novels written about. So you're in a Thai village, but they're always in each other's business. So it doesn't mean they're in your face. There's other ways you can be in people's business.
Man, my mother-in-law knows more about what goes on in my condo than in like a week than I have in 10 years.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's what I mean. So maybe part of the reason that I'm just saying that I feel free in Thailand just walking around. I know I don't have political freedom. I know that. And like I said, if you make me choose, I will choose political freedom. But that's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about just walking around. I think I'm probably feel more free here, but it might just be because I'm foreigners and Thai people ignore me. You know what I mean? So back in the States, everyone speaks my language, and it's like they're able to impose stuff on me because we're part of the same culture. Here, we're just freaking aliens, and we're just treated like freaks. And so we have the freedom to be freaks. Like it's like being a foreigner is strange. It's like you do lose some things, but you do gain this freedom. Like we live in a weird bubble.
Well, this is an interesting topic that I think is fun to talk about, because we do live in a bubble and we are unique and we look unique and we're treated differently.
But we don't have to follow Thai rules. Like all the Thai rules about seniority and whying. Like if we why an old person, we get bonus points, but we don't get punished if we don't.
Right. But, I think when you're the freedom to sort of live in this little bubble and sort of separate yourself from the society that you're in, I think that can also bleed a little bit into ignorance. And I think the phrase ignorance is bliss can be very, very true in Thailand too. So am I free or am I just ignorant of what's going on around
That's right.
me?
You and I, that's right. No, you're right. That's the expat bubble. We're just so clueless, and we're probably breaking all kinds of cultural norms and rules. But so that's freedom, like being clueless. Right? That's another facet of this. Like being clueless is a type of freedom.
What's the land of the clueless? Is that a different country? It's Farang land.
Well, one other thing I want to mention, it came up in our interview from last weekend, and because we were talking to two highly educated people. Mm-hmm. And the woman we interviewed, the Thai woman who has a PhD in political science, she actually said that when she was in the States, she felt more free because of the protection of the police and the courts. So even though she's a woman of means, a woman who's well educated, she basically was saying that because the rule of law is weak in Thailand, that wealthy people can kind of push around or bully you, and there might not be much you can do about it. And you have said many times, if a rich Thai person wants to get you, they're going to get you.
Right.
Like if you cross, like you and I know, if we cross the wrong Thai person, there's not much we're going to be able to do about it. We're going to end up getting deported or end up in jail. And this is the real rule of law. Like the real rule of law, she was saying, for coming from the Thai perspective, she was like, she felt protected in the States because random strangers couldn't do anything they wanted to her. So this is the real value of rule of law. And that's why I would always choose it. So if you say you got to choose one, I do want the real rule of law. But the rule of law is not the ultimate arbiter of what freedom means, right? Like if I sued Elon Musk in Canada for being a douche nozzle running Twitter into the ground, right? Like his lawyers would destroy my lawyers because he could afford better ones. So true that.
Is that like the other side of the same coin in Thailand? Like they might not have lawyers, but they can still stomp my life into the ground.
Right.
It's just in Canada, there's a more structured way to go about it.
Yeah, I think, it just depends on what you care about or what you're afraid of happening. The bottom line is, in the States, if someone really mistreats you and you're in a situation where you actually have evidence of the mistreatment, then you have a good chance of getting a recourse. Now, the justice system isn't perfect, and maybe if they have really good lawyers, you're in big trouble. But the bottom line is, people in the U.S. know that if you do something bad to someone else, there are legal consequences that are likely.
Right, okay.
However, where the rule of law is weak or there's a lot of corruption, then bad people can potentially get away with shit. Now, I feel like, again, as foreigners, we just get ignored, so we don't have to bear the brunt of this. But maybe other Thai people feel that. Like they feel like, I don't know, maybe because they can't trust the courts or they can't trust the cops. Maybe that does impose on their day-to-day walking down the street freedom. That's the issue. It's like, because Thai people know they can't rely on the cops, or maybe probably can't, or that maybe rich people can kind of do whatever they want. Maybe that is an imposition that we don't experience as foreigners.
It's also a little bit of a different question, though. I mean, are you free versus is Thailand the land of the free? Right?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to generalize. I mean, it's hard to, I'm trying to, it's just interesting that Thailand has that name.
But does Thailand deserve to have that stereotype lobbed around?
Well, it's interesting because, so etymologically, it's a bit sketchy.
Right.
But of course, we know Thailand was never colonized. So I think a lot of Thai people, they associate the land of the free with the fact that they've never been colonized. So in that respect, it's totally valid. Okay.
Fair enough.
And then you also have this cultural kind of chill, sabai, non-confrontational thing, which also is valid. Like the fact that it's just a relaxed culture. So I think land of the free does have meaning in that sense. Like this is just a fun, relaxed place where people don't get in your face. So there is just a lot of practical freedom, like just not having to worry about stepping on someone's toes. Like the bottom line is most Thai people, if you step on their toes, they'll laugh.
Right. Practical freedom. And we've talked about this before. If you and I ever moved back to the States or Canada, I'd be worried that some offhand goofy joke I made is going to get me fired and kicked out of my homeowners association,
That's right. That's right. Like the bottom line is Thai people are difficult to offend. You can offend them if you cross certain black lines.
Right.
But in general, they're hard to offend.
So
anyway.
I'd be back home kicked out of my homeowners association going, this isn't freedom. I just made a little joke.
Exactly. So anyway, I'm not sure we've answered any questions, but we've raised some interesting questions. So I want to put this question out to all of our listeners, whether you're a patron or not. If you have visited Thailand as a tourist, or if you live here, I want to ask you this question. Did you feel more free, whatever that word means to you? Did you feel more free in Thailand than you do in your home country, and why? And if we get enough responses, maybe we'll do a show on the responses, because I'm really curious. Because if you mean political freedom, I definitely more free in the States. And if you say, okay, you got to pick, I'm going to choose the States. But I think maybe day to day, just walking around or going out on the weekend, I might feel more free here, like in a practical sense. Like I might have just more social freedom here.
I'm interested in seeing what people respond to, because like someone might say, I was able to ride my motorcycle without a helmet. That's freedom, baby.
Right, exactly. No, the fact that, I used to never ride motorbikes, but now I do. I don't drive, but I get on the back of motorbikes. And depending on where we're going, the motorbike guy will give me a helmet. But a lot of times he doesn't, even though by law you're supposed to wear a helmet.
Yeah, they've stopped giving me helmets because they know it fits on me like a yarmulke. It just doesn't really do anything for me.
I could just see it standing on the top of the back of your head. But yeah, no, this is a great political, social issue, and I really wish I was motivated enough to like get academic about it and write a paper. But okay, this is research. I'm doing it right now. This is my scholarly research. Right. We're putting it out there to our listeners. Do you feel more free, in quotes, whatever that means to you, while you're in Thailand?
And we'll follow this up with a podcast episode where Ed reads out his 60-page thesis that he's going to write this week on what freedom means to him. Interesting question. I think it really depends on who you ask. But yeah, man, I don't think there's a black and white answer either way. But it's a good one to talk about. All right, let's do a round of Would You Rather, where one of us picks two contrasting situations tied to Thailand to debate and choose which one we'd prefer. Now, Ed, I'm going to go a little bit dark here, just because I was inspired by some bad news I heard today. Someone I know, he lost someone close to him, which is always very sad. But it got me thinking about when this happens here versus when it happens in Western countries. And obviously, we don't want to be in this situation at all. But if you had to be in this situation, would you prefer to go to a Western funeral or a Thai funeral?
Wow. Dude, this is kind of dark, but whatever.
Deep,
it's actually an interesting question. Let me think about this for a second. I've been to several Thai funerals. Obviously, I've been to funerals back in the States.
Yeah.
To me, there's a couple differences. One very obvious difference is the Thai funerals typically span several days. I don't know what the actual rule is, but it seems they're at least like 3 or 4 days, but it might be longer. So you have multiple days you can show up. And there's various ceremonies on different days. So it's kind of extended out. And then typically, I mean, I grew up Catholic. I'm not religious anymore. And of course, Christian funerals are just a singular thing, which is the length of a typical mass. So it might be like an hour long. But some Westerners, and depends on your culture, I've been to, my Jewish friends, when someone passes away, they sit Shiva, which I believe is 7 days. So in a way, it's a little bit more Thai style. There's about a 7-day mourning period. So the West is not monolithic, of course. I think the thing about Thai funerals is they are actually more relaxed. They're actually less formal, but because they stretch out longer, I think I probably would go for at least a Christian funeral. This is actually a tough question. The Thai funerals I've been to, it'll be like, come anytime after 4 p.m. From Wednesday through Saturday.
Yeah.
So you can just pop in and stay for 10 minutes if you want to leave, or stay for certain ceremonies. This is tough. I do like the defined nature of like a Christian funeral, start and stop. But I think I'm going to choose the extended one because you actually have more freedom in that case.
Interesting. Yeah,
I'm going to choose. Very tough call. Very tough call.
I'm going to choose the Thai one too, but for different reasons. I think that no matter what funeral you go to, is always a sense of loss, is always a sense of sadness. But I think for Western funerals, it's just the ones that I've been to anyway. There's always this undercurrent of just absolute bloody grief and loss and tragedy. I think that Westerners have a real hard time dealing with death. I'm not saying I don't, but whereas Thai funerals, I find that although everyone is sad and there's also a sense of loss, I think it's more like, to use that phrase, a celebration of their life. And I don't know if that's because most Thais are Buddhists and they believe in reincarnation and the person will come back. But I just sort of feel like Thai funerals are less shrouded in grief and loss. and
Interesting.
more about coming together to remember a person's memory, to remember their life, and to think about them.
Interesting. That's fascinating. It's funny. As you were saying that, I started to flip flop again because because one thing I do like about Western funerals is I do like eulogies. I mean, obviously it's tragic and it's sad, but I like when someone stands up and gives a speech about someone, and does that. I don't remember that happening at a Thai funeral I've been at, like a formal eulogy. God, I might flip. I think I might flip back to the Western one because I like eulogies. I mean, obviously it's tragic, and I guess not all eulogies are great. But I like when someone stands up and tells the story of someone's life or how they knew someone. And sometimes you get 3 or 4 people stand up, and I've learned things at funerals about someone's life I didn't know.
Well, I've also been asked to do that at Thai funerals as well.
Oh, interesting.
Now it was a Thai funeral attended by mostly foreigners.
Right.
But,
Yeah, I mean, so it's tough. I kind of like the, it's funny. I like the eulogy tradition, but I also like the extended days just because it gives you more freedom to pop in when it's convenient for you.
Right.
Like at least the typical Christian funeral, it's set at a certain time, and if you can't make it, you're done. You can't go. So tough call.
I still think I'm sticking with the Thai one.
I don't know. Now that you got me on this topic of eulogies,
You're going to be sitting up at 4 this morning in bed, staring at the roof.
Yeah,
but
which
then
one?
the Western one does this. Oh man,
That's right. All right, I think I'm going to go. I'm flipping again. I'm going Western. I'm going eulogy.
Fair
I'm
enough.
going eulogy.
Good one.
All right, after that dark topic, a final thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Yeah, baby. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can send us a voicemail through our website that will feature on the show. I dumped Twitter, but you can now find me on Mastodon at bkkgreg@home.social. So thanks for listening, everyone, and we will see you back here next week.
No doubt.
I got into my son is forgetting some of his homework at school, so I had to be the stern disciplinarian tonight. Dude, it sucks, So I'm like asking him these like hard rhetorical questions, like why did you forget this book and why don't you pay attention and things like that. And he's just standing in front of me looking like dejected. And,
Sure.
And I almost started laughing because I remember exactly how he feels. I remember sitting there in front of my granddad and my mom when they were asking me these same questions, feeling like, wow, I'm really
you're like
exposed
humiliated and like weak.
Yeah, I have no answer to this question.
Wouldn't it be funny? Wouldn't it be funny if you just like snapped and you started laughing? You're like, I'm just fucking with you, dude. Like, I'm
just kidding. Nah, don't worry about it. Homework's not important. I didn't learn jack in school.
Let's go play some video games.
Right. God, yeah.
So funny.
If kids only knew what their parents were really thinking, they'd be shocked.